The capital of the arts, the City of Light, universally recognized as one of the world's most beautiful cities, Paris possesses an enormous cultural wealth which it owes to its extraordinary history as the capital city of France. The tour starts at the Bastille, a site of major symbolic importance in the history of France, where the first events of the Parisian revolt against the monarchy took place. This place serves as a reminder to the citizens of France of the guiding principles of the French Republic, the ideals of freedom, equality, and brotherhood. A column surmounted by the spirit of liberty celebrating these ideals was erected on the Place de la Bastille in 1830. Visiting Paris is a living encounter with names and places taken from the pages of history. Not far from the Bastille column, the Marais quarter was once an undesirable marshy area of Paris that was transformed into a stately neighborhood of urban mansions and attractive gardens. Paris's original attempt at urban planning, the Place des Vosges is now its oldest square. The square was in the past a very stylish neighborhood, site of many grand residences and their salons, as the capital's famous intellectual and philosophical conversational groups were known. The neighborhood is home to some of the city's oldest buildings, and their architectural treasures make the Marais a charming place for a stroll. In the center of Paris, on the right bank of the Seine, the Hôtel de Ville, or City Hall, is close to the Cathedral of Notre Dame. The history of Paris's City Hall can be traced back to the time of the water merchants, who transported their goods by river and used this building as the home of their trade guild. Paris has long been known for the splendor and magnificence of its architecture. As France's capital city, it is a land of man-made architectural marvels, with its modern buildings representing evolution from the historical ones. Paris's architecture and design represents various periods of constructions and a range of corresponding styles. The French Renaissance style of Paris's Hôtel de Ville took its inspiration from the chateau of the Loire Valley. Another attraction not far from the Marais district is the lively quarter around the Centre Pompidou, which offers much in the way of visual art. The colorful moving sculptures and fountains in the pool on the Place Igor Stravinsky are the creations of the artists Jean Tigli and Niki de Saint-Phal. This squirting waterworks pays homage to the Russian composer Stravinsky, and each fountain corresponds to one of his compositions. The tumultuous history of the construction of the Pompidou Center in the Marais is a symbol of the integration of contemporary art into Parisian life. In the 1970s, French President Georges Pompidou, a lover of modern art, wished to construct a great modern art museum and library that would be free and open to all. The architects of the museum, led by Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers, hoped to create a building that would resemble an art factory. The metal structures, the colored circulation pipes, and above all the great escalator and its glass tube brought the guts of the building out into the open, displaying them for all to see. Since its construction, this avant-garde building has become one of Paris's most distinctive sights. It's time to leave the area of Les Halles. Walking through the narrow streets away from the Centre Pompidou, we come to the Church of Saint-Eustache, a Gothic building not far from the Forum des Halles and its gardens. The site of Saint-Eustache has always been a popular meeting place for all strata of Parisians, whether nobility, bourgeoisie, tradesmen, or workers. A stroll through this part of Paris is a way of really getting to know the city, its neighborhoods, and its inhabitants. Paris is a river town, divided into two banks by the Seine River. Of the islands in the Seine, two are natural and one is man-made. The city as we see it today developed along the banks of the river, whose relationship with the city has never ceased to evolve. The banks of the Seine are studded with a succession of magnificent urban monuments. The Palais de Justice and the magnificent medieval church of Sainte-Chapelle stand on one of Paris's two natural islands, the Île de la Cité. The Tour de l'Horloge, or clock tower, dates from 1334, with reliefs from the late 16th century. In the center of the palace's facade, a high wrought iron gate from the late 18th century leads into the May courtyard, the work of architects Antoine and des Maisons. The Palais de Justice, where the justice of state has been dispensed since medieval times, is built on the site of the former royal palace of Saint-Louis. From the 16th century to the French Revolution, it was the seat of Paris's parliament. The Ile Saint-Louis was mapped and built from end to end during the 17th century reigns of Henri IV and Louis XIII. Once used for grazing cattle and stocking wood, its charming streets are now lined with homes and a few small eateries. To stroll along the left bank close to Notre Dame Cathedral is also to promenade through one of the most beautiful of all cityscapes and the biggest open-air bookshop in the world. 235 little bookstalls, called bouquinistes, line both sides of the river, just as they have for centuries. Constructed on a site on the Île de la Cité that has been considered sacred since the Roman era, Notre Dame Cathedral, with its amazing display of intricate details, is considered a masterpiece of French Gothic architecture. To appreciate the features of Notre Dame Cathedral, approach it from the park behind the cathedral for an impressive view of the structure and a look at the magnificent flying buttresses that makes the immense roof possible. The facade of the cathedral is an imposing, simple and harmonious mass whose strength and sober grandeur is based on the interplay between vertical and horizontal lines. Powerful buttresses that spring up to the top of the towers, lifting them heavenwards and symbolically relating that this cathedral church was built for God. Two wide horizontal strips seem to pull the building back down to earth. The timeless simplicity and harmony of the facade have continued to fascinate art historians and architects throughout the centuries. Notre Dame is the most popular monument in Paris, and indeed in all of France, with 13 million visitors each year, beating even the Eiffel Tower. But the famous cathedral is also an active Catholic church, a place of pilgrimage, the focal point for French Catholicism, and the site of the country's most important religious events. The banks of the Seine River offer some of the greatest urban scenery in the world. The city's panoramas can be discovered through a walk on the pedestrian quays lining the left bank, or on a river cruise. On Sunday, the streets along the Seine, normally clogged with cars, are reserved for pedestrians. Stretching from Bercy upriver to the Orsay Museum downriver, the quays of the left bank offer a perfect place to appreciate the changing features of the cityscape and enjoy a leisurely stroll. In the heart of Paris, along a beautiful and historic river, the atmosphere is unique. One of the most characteristic features of the Seine River as it flows through the city of Paris are the bateaux mouches, which offer tourists and locals alike the possibility of appreciating the urban panoramas from the water. In the hot summer months, the banks of the Seine are covered with tons of sand, turning them into an urban beach, which quickly becomes a preferred spot for locals to work on their tans. The success of the Paris-Plage initiative has motivated some city officials to propose the permanent removal of vehicles from the roads that line the river, turning them into riverside parks instead. At the turn of the 19th century, two large railway stations were built in Paris, the Gare de Lyon and the Gare d'Orsay. The Gare d'Orsay had the most prominent site, rising on the banks of the Seine opposite the Louvre. Since 1986, the railway station, housed in a superb Beaux-Arts edifice, is now home to the Musée d'Orsay, with its collection of French art from between 1848 and 1915. The building itself is the museum's first work of art, and its renovation provides a splendid venue for a collection that includes magnificent works of art by artists including Monet, Degas, Renoir, and Van Gogh. Located on the border of Paris's 1st and 4th arrondissement, the Place du Châtelet sits on the right bank of the River Seine. It provides both a compass point and a convenient entry point into the city. Rising above the treetops of a little park alongside the Rue de Rivoli is a beautiful Gothic tower of Saint-Jacques, with its two slender gargoyles at each of its four corners, seemingly so fragile that one wonders how they could support their weight. This tower is all that is left of the Church of Saint-Jacques-la-Boucherie, so called because its patrons were the wholesale butchers of the nearby Les Halles market. For centuries, Paris has been known as a gathering point for pilgrims on the way of St. James, the pilgrimage route to Santiago de Compostela. The Saint-Jacques Tower, which contains a relic of the saint, welcomed pilgrims setting out on the pilgrimage to Spain. The waters of the River Seine have always been the heart and soul of Paris, dating back to the days when the Parisi tribe first established a fishing village on the island, now known as the Île de la Cité. One of the most relaxing and convenient ways to view the historical sites of the city in all their grandeur has long been from the glass-covered decks of the bateaux mouches, those unique long boats which leisurely ply the Seine. In addition to the historic landmarks lining the Seine, travelers notice the many splendid bridges which span the river, 37 in all, some of them several centuries old and designated as historical heritage sites in their own right. Walking along the banks of the Seine is also the best way to see Paris, with its elegant boulevards, colorful neighborhoods, and majestic buildings. The city's leading historians link the beauty of Paris to its harmonious architecture, the product of a powerful tradition of classical design, stretching from the Renaissance to the 20th century. One of the city's best-known sites is the Louvre Museum. The Louvre, in its successive architectural metamorphoses, has dominated central Paris since the late 12th century. When it was built, it stood on the city's western edge, though the original structure was gradually engulfed as the city grew. The dark fortress of the early days was transformed into the Renaissance dwelling of François I, and later, the sumptuous palace of the Sun King, Louis XIV. Here we explore the history of this extraordinary edifice, and of the museum that has been its occupant since 1793. Constructed of cut stone, the Louvre is a masterpiece of the French Renaissance. In the 16th century, architect Pierre Lescot was one of the first to apply pure classical ideas in France, and his design for a new wing at the Louvre defined its future development. Originally a royal palace, the Louvre became a public museum at the end of the 18th century. In the 17th century, architect Claude Perrault collaborated in the final design of the colonnade, a massive row of paired columns that rises above the unadorned first story and dominates the majestic east facade of the Louvre. The austerity of the east facade, with its central pediment and end pavilions, is often associated with Perrault's architectural ideas. The simple character of the ground floor basement sets off the paired Corinthian columns, modeled strictly according to Vitruvius, against a shadowed void, with pavilions at both ends. The facade, divided into 5 parts, is a solution typical of French classicism. to one of the most famous collections of fine art in the world, including the priceless Greek statue known as the Venus de Milo and the portrait of the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. The Louvre Museum is the most important of France's national museums and art galleries. The Louvre's collection covers Western art from the medieval period to 1848, formative works from the civilizations of the ancient world, as well as works of Islamic art. The collection is grouped into 8 departments, each shaped and defined by the activities of the curators, collectors, and donors. Visitors to the Louvre now number 9 million every year, making it the most popular art museum in the world. The Louvre takes up the south side of the Rue de Rivoli, and on the other side runs an arcade more than 1.6 kilometers long. The Rue de Rivoli marked a transitional compromise between an urbanism composed of prestigious monuments and aristocratic squares, and the forms of a modern town. The Passage Richelieu links the Cours Napoleon with the Rue de Rivoli. The street is a mix of traditionalism with its monuments and squares, and modernism with its buildings of contemporary design. The houses lining the street all have identical facades, leaving the impression of an endless row of houses. The city's many bridges over the Seine River may be elegant, romantic, or monumental in style, but many also have a long and interesting history. If the bridges on either side of the Cité and the one which connects that island with the Ile Saint-Louis are counted, there are 37 bridges within the city limits of Paris. Paris's most sumptuous bridge, the Pont Alexandre III, opened just in time for the Universal Exposition of 1900. Aligned with the Esplanade des Invalides, the Pont Alexandre III connects the Grand and Petit Palais on the right bank with the Hôtel des Invalides on the left bank. The bridge is lavishly decorated with lampposts and sculptures of cherubs and nymphs. On each end of the Pont Alexandre III stand large gilded statues on granite pillars, 17 meters high. Each of the ornaments on the bridge was created by a different artist. The bridge is constructed of steel and stone in the Art Nouveau style. It was opened by the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, who also laid the foundation stone in 1900 to celebrate the Franco-Russian alliance. It was named in memory of the Tsar's father. The Arc de Triomphe stands majestically in the center of the Étoile, a large roundabout from which 12 avenues, including the Champs-Élysées, emanate. The arch is decorated by an ensemble of reliefs made by famous French sculptors and representing the most significant moments of the wars of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. Today, the arch remains a symbol of national pride and is regularly the site of solemn state ceremonies in commemoration of the wars fought by France. The Grand Palais is a large glass exhibition hall that was built for the Paris Exposition of 1900. The exterior of this massive palace combines an imposing classical facade with a riot of Art Nouveau ironwork. With the Petit Palais and the Pont Alexandre III, the Grand Palais served as one of the main focuses of the International Exposition of 1900 and helped solidify the position of France as world leader in the arts. For more than 100 years, the Grand Palais has served as a public exhibition hall and hosts to a variety of grand events. Directly across the street from the Grand Palais stands a smaller version of the same building, the Petit Palais. The main entrance is reached by a small flight of stairs leading to large glass doors set in gilded wrought iron frames and framed by Ionic columns. Like many Beaux-Arts buildings, it combines Greek and Roman forms, but with the addition of abundant ornamentation, a combination which makes it rather eclectic in style. Situated along the Seine, the Place de la Concorde, in the shape of an octagon, separates the Tuileries Garden from the beginning of the Champs-Élysées. Several decades after its construction, this square was to serve as a focal point for the bloodiest political upheaval in the history of France, the French Revolution. In the center of the square stands the obelisk of Luxor, a pink granite monolith that was given to the French by the Viceroy of Egypt, Muhammad Ali, in 1829. More than 3,300 years old, it is decorated with hieroglyphics describing the reigns of the pharaohs Ramesses II and Ramesses III. The church in the form of a Greek temple just north of the Place de la Concorde is known as La Madeleine. No less than 52 Corinthian columns surround the church, each of them 20 meters high. The temple's facade acts as a great architectural counterbalance to the colonnaded facade of the Palais Bourbon across the river. From the Pont Alexandre III, the boat tour continues to the Pont d'Iéna and the Eiffel Tower. Each of Paris's bridges has its own story to tell about its construction, the people who have passed over it throughout its history, and the events that have taken place upon it. These silent structures are the living symbols of Paris's architecture. The Iéna Bridge links the Eiffel Tower on the left bank to the Trocadero district on the right bank. The Trocadero area, made up of the Place du Trocadero and Terrace Gardens, is dominated by the Palais de Chaillot, a sprawling building in the sober neoclassical style. The style of the Palais de Chaillot is typical of the time when it was built, in 1937. The Palais de Chaillot currently houses two museums, an anthropology and prehistory museum dedicated to the life and history of human civilization in France, and a museum displaying a collection of 17th century naval objects, including scale models of warships and sailing ships. Between the two wings of the palace is the Esplanade des Droits de l'Homme, the view from which is dominated by the Eiffel Tower and the Champ de Mars. The Eiffel Tower, the iconic symbol of the city of Paris, is a marvel of design and structure, an impressive sight worth getting to know up close. The world-famous Paris Tower is a massive iron, designed by Gustave Eiffel for the Universal Exposition in 1889, and was the tallest structure in the world until 1930, when it was surpassed by New York's Chrysler Building. 100 years of historic and scientific events, famous visitors, anecdotes, and incredible stories have had the Eiffel Tower at their center. The Eiffel Tower is a monument composed of extraordinary records. Its deepest foundations lie 15 meters underground. Its total weight is over 10,000 tons. It is illuminated by 336,000 projector lamps. 2.5 million rivets hold it together, and since it was opened in 1889 until 2009, more than 240 million persons have come to Paris to visit the Iron Lady. The Eiffel Tower is covered in paint in order to protect its iron frame. This stylish lady's attentiveness to color coordination has resulted in the need for 3 different shades of paint to go with the hues of the Parisian sky, with the darkest at the bottom and the lightest at the top. 50 tons of paint are used every 5 years to repaint the structure. Leaving the banks of the Seine, we climb up to the Basilica of the Sacré-Cœur, a favorite place for Parisians to take their Sunday stroll. The Sacred Heart Basilica stands high atop the Montmartre Hill in northern Paris. The Sacré-Cœur Basilica is relatively new, constructed in the late 1800s. Though in style it intentionally recalls ancient Romanesque Byzantine architecture, vestiges of which have been preserved all across southern France. The triple-arched portico of the impressive facade is surmounted by 2 bronze equestrian statues of France's national saints, Joan of Arc and King Saint Louis IX. Not far from the crowds of tourists are the quiet and charming spots that define the Montmartre area. The best way to experience Montmartre is simply to hit the streets and notice what grabs people. A carefree attitude is the key to appreciating the true spirit of Montmartre. The massive building has managed to keep its brilliant white color even in the polluted air of a big city like Paris. This can be attributed to the Château Landon stones which were used for the construction of the basilica. When it rains, the stones react to the water and secrete calcite, which acts like a bleach, keeping the stones pearly white. As a designated historic area, little development is permitted in Montmartre, which has allowed it to retain much of its unique character and village-like charm. Visitors can stroll through the area with its bohemian atmosphere and enjoy its cafes, restaurants, and boutiques, all of which are easily accessible by foot. The Place du Théâtre, a few streets away from the Sacré-Cœur Basilica, is the heart of Montmartre. Today, the picturesque square is home to many painters selling their works, but once such famous artists as Toulouse-Lautrec, Van Gogh, and Picasso spent time there. While single-minded sightseers quickly dash through the narrow winding streets and hike determinedly up the never-ending stairs to reach the ivory shrine of Sacré-Cœur, the more sensible and spirited of tourists will spend at least a few hours wandering through the quarter's meandering streets and soaking up the village atmosphere of Montmartre. Palais Garnier is Paris' landmark opera house, which is also known by several different names, including Opéra de Paris, Opéra Garnier, and the Paris Opera. Many of Paris's monuments have maintained a historical presence and significance, and this opera house is no exception. From being a tribute to Napoleon III to inspiring one of the greatest novels of all time, the Palais Garnier is one of the most noteworthy structures that have helped make Paris what it is today. An ornate building, it is monumental in style and opulently decorated with elaborate multicolored marble friezes, columns, and lavish statuary. Paris nightlife comes in every imaginable shape, form, and intensity, and Paris's Seine River is an essential element in creating the city's legendary romance. Just think how many movies have romantic scenes that are filmed on one of the many bridges over the Seine in Paris. The season leading up to Christmas is a light-filled festive time in Paris that can provide an ideal backdrop for a romantic vacation or an enchanting holiday season. The City of Lights lives up to its name in a big way at Christmas time, and the trees that line the Champs-Élysées are among the many trees in Paris that glow with lights to celebrate the holidays. It's at night that the Place de la Concorde is most evocative. Illuminated with its view of the Champs-Élysées, there's no place on earth quite as magical. Incredible decorations and window displays at the Galeries Lafayette and Printemps department stores on the Boulevard Haussmann will leave visitors starry-eyed. For the occasion, the facades are covered in a complex web of bright white and yellow lights. The sparkling lights of the Christmas trees in front of Notre Dame offer a splash of color against the creamy grandeur of the cathedral's illuminated facade. The Eiffel Tower turned blue for the 20th anniversary of Europe Day. The illuminated red windmill of the Moulin Rouge's sign competes for attention with the historic nightclub show, with its famous can-can dancers, and has become a symbol of Paris's racy nightlife. To visit Paris is to take a plunge into history. Vestiges of the ancient Roman city of Lutetia, great medieval abbeys, Gothic splendor, classic architecture, Napoleonic collections, Haussmannian views. An exceptional concentration of artistic and cultural treasures awaits the visitor.